The newest of the iPhone-inspired designs from UMIDIGI is the G9 5G. Here's a quick look at what this one brings to their lineup. Out of the box, it already has the included TPU case installed. Underneath, we get a nice looking red USB-C to USB-C charge cable. The charging brick is rated at 20 watts. The TPU case is a translucent white. It has a bit of a fine texture to it, unlike a plain TPU case. It feels almost paper-like in texture, but it just doesn't look good. So let's take this off and look at the actual phone. Now it's looking a bit better. The material in the back is shimmery. It feels smooth, not textured. Here's the familiar camera setup. Around the phone, we get the always good to have headphone jack. Here are the volume buttons, the integrated fingerprint scanner and power button, a single speaker on the bottom next to the USB-C charge port, and rounding things off on this side is the programmable key that UMIDIGI calls the express key and the SIM tray. The SIM tray is a dual SIM with one being shared as a micro SD card slot. On the inside, this is powered by a budget Unisoc T765 8-core processor. The physical RAM is at 6 GB with fake RAM expansion to an additional 6 GB, which is why they claim 12 GB. Internal storage is at 128 GB with available expandable memory via the shared micro SD card slot. The display is 6.75-inch at 1600 by 720 resolution with 90 Hz refreshability. Its peak brightness is rated at 450 nits. To make that mean something, a Pixel 8 has a peak brightness of 1400 nits, and a Galaxy S23 is at 1200 nits. I found it still usable in bright sunlight despite it being a fraction of the flagships. The battery size is 5000 mAh and it can charge at 18 watts. There is no NFC. The camera claims to be 50 megapixels with AI, but activating 50 megapixels disables the AI. The hardware device app detects only 12 megapixels in the rear, 8 megapixels in the front, and 1.8 megapixels for the macro lens. Video recording is set at 4K at 30 frames per second for the rear and 1080p 30 frames per second in the front. I'll leave photo and video samples at the end. Other modes include panorama, portrait, night, pro mode, time-lapse, slow motion, a QR code reader, and the macro shot. As mentioned earlier, this has a side-mounted fingerprint scanner, and it's pretty fast. In this test, it unlocked the phone 5 out of 6 times. Lift to wake works great with the face unlock. Waking with the power key triggers face unlock also. As long as you have the right angle, it works pretty much every time. For the software side, we get the DDU launcher that's installed on most UMIDIGI phones. It has a shameless copy of the iOS look. Swiping down from the home screen brings up the smart services by default with some system optimization tools, weather, and recently used apps. You can also set up the Google -1 screen by swiping to the right. Icons are set as 6 rows by 4 columns, but the home screen has the Google search permanently positioned on top. You also get a 7th row on the bottom as a dock. There's an option to have an app tray, but it categorizes the apps into its own categories. It is a bit confusing since you can't choose which categories the apps go in. There's only 4 visible icons, but there may be more than that in each category, so you'll have to do some searching if you're not familiar with where your apps are located. I found it easier just to lay all the icons out there and put them in your own folders. The launcher is usable even though it might not be the most customizable. You could always install your own favorites though. Onto the settings is pretty basic stuff here. Noticeable mentions include the express key that's common on these phones. If you're not familiar with these, you can customize the action of this key. On the G9, it only lets you choose a double click or a long press. Most other brands will let you choose a single click along with that. I like to be able to set up the double press for flashlight and a long press for the screenshot. The flashlight will not turn on with the screen off though. The Smart Assistant choices let you choose alternative layouts for the navigation bar if you choose this over the Android gestures navigation. For example, swapping the back and recents key or including a 4th key to show notifications with one click. You also get a screen record option, glove mode, and emergency rescue mode, which sets up messages to be sent to select contacts if you're in an emergency situation. The gesture control sets the options to activate a 3-finger screenshot. And the screenshot option lets you toggle the screenshot sound. Seems like the last two could have been consolidated. Next is the memory expansion to use internal storage to act as RAM for the system. I always leave this off because it's like Windows virtual RAM. It's slower when the system uses this RAM. And with a physical 6 gigs, it's pretty decent for my use case scenarios. If I needed more RAM, I would have bought a better phone. The smart control is where you find the double click to wake, lift to wake, and some gestures to interact with phone calls. The rest is pretty basic Android stuff. For the display settings, you get your typical contrast and color temp. But there's also a video display enhancement setting that claims to brighten videos and make the colors more vivid. It lists the programs it applies to. Also included is a SDR to HDR video enhancement. Now let's see how well it functions. Opening multiple apps is not an issue. Here's Instagram. The Webull stock trading app. Next is Temu, my favorite place to shop. Also Walmart, my favorite physical retailer. Let's also load up AliExpress. Six gigabytes of RAM seems fine for typical usage. I see some reloading after browsing through some shopping sites like Walmart or AliExpress, but the reload times seem fine. And now for the split screen, YouTube, shopping, and message reply all at once demonstration. I'll start with a YouTube picture-in-picture. Now I start shopping at Temu. There are always great deals there, and I'm always lucky with these bonus spins. Okay, let's split this screen to the top. And to satisfy my ADHD, I'll load up Instagram in split screen. All three are going at once. I can scroll and browse Instagram, go back to some Temu browsing, and then back to Instagram, all while YouTube plays. And if one of my chump friends decide to interrupt me with a text message, I can read and reply from the notifications bar without closing any windows. As for using this as a phone, here's how a speaker phone call sounds like.
Call the Walgreens in Las Vegas.
I found a few options. Which would you like?
First one.
All right, got it. Calling Walgreens. Hi, thanks for calling Walgreens. At the corner of Maryland and Flamingo in Las Vegas. Para continuar en español, oprima 9.
To test the quality of the microphone, I'll leave a voicemail to myself and play it back.
Please leave your message for 419.
I'm leaving a message using the G9 5G phone.
I'm leaving a message using the G9 5G phone. That didn't sound too good. It seems a bit muffled. As far as network speeds go, both of these phones are on T-Mobile, and the signal indicator says 5G. But running a speed test, the UMIDIGI is considerably slower than the Motorola ThinkPhone on the same network. On Android Auto, it does connect and function wirelessly, but oftentimes I get random GPS signal losses, and it took a bit of time to lock back into the GPS signal. Sometimes unlocking the phone helps it regain its signal, but this shouldn't be needed, especially in a driving environment. If you use Android Auto regularly, I would not rely on this phone. Here are the photo and video samples as I summarize my review of the UMIDIGI G95G. I think this phone is a great value for casual users that just like to browse social media but are not picky about the photo quality if they post also. Everything works as it should, as long as you are not a demanding user requiring a ton of storage, high-quality photos, or do video encoding and editing frequently on the phone. There are a few stutters here and there, but nothing that frustrated me. The biometrics work well and better than most phones of this class. The speaker sound, while not very loud, is clear. If you talk on the phone a lot, the mic is not as clear, but still I think it will be understandable. The 5000 mAh battery lasts me 2 solid days. I have about 65 to 70% remaining at the end of the day. I'm mostly messaging and YouTube watching. The claimed 50 megapixel camera is more of a gimmick, as there's not an increase in detail when zooming in, as you see in this photo sample. All pictures will be shot at 12 megapixel anyway, unless you specify the 50 megapixel mode. In that mode, you lose pretty much all of the special features like the AI, portrait, or night mode. As for night mode, it makes things a bit brighter and helps slightly in how good the image looks. The major issue I have with this phone is the Android Auto GPS reception issues, even if you do not use Android Auto. Not having a reliable signal means it's not reliable for standalone navigation using Google Maps or Waze or whatever navigation app you use. I hope this helps you decide if this phone is a good buy for your needs.